John screamed and ran into the dark Calabar night as the dead rose from their tables, calling his name with voices that shook his soul. Welcome to Royal Beat Tales. If you are just seeing us for the first time, please subscribe, like, and comment for more unique stories. John was a young man who worked at the city morgue in Calabar, Nigeria. It was a small, cold building where the dead were kept. Late one night, John was alone at work. Outside, the wind blew as the lights wobbled. John felt a chill on his skin. He walked between rows of metal tables and storage cabinets. Each table held a still body under a white cloth. John tried to be brave, but he was a little scared. Sometimes he sings a song to feel less afraid, but tonight his humming was shaky. Suddenly, John heard a soft pound at the far end of the room. He froze and listened, his heart beating fast. Maybe it's just a rat or the wind, he thought. Then he heard another pound, like someone knocking from inside one of the cabinets. Is anyone there? John whispered into the cold air. No one answered. The room fell silent again. John took a deep breath and told himself it was nothing, just his mind playing tricks. He shook his head and tried to keep working, writing notes on his clipboard. The silence felt heavy around him. Then, thud. A loud bang crashed from one of the storage cabinets. John jumped, nearly dropping his clipboard as the sound echoed through the room. His hands were shaking as he walked slowly toward the wall of metal drawers where the bodies were kept. The noise seemed to have come from one of the drawers near the end. John's fingers trembled as he grasped the icy metal handle of that drawer. He took a deep breath and pulled it open. The drawer slid out with a sigh. Under the harsh white light lay the body of a man, his face pale and still. John held his breath, wondering if he had imagined the noise. But then the man's hand jerked. John panted and stumbled back. The man's fingers moved again, curling slowly into a fist. John felt his blood turn to ice. He wanted to run, but he was so shocked that his legs would not move. Suddenly, the man's milky, empty eyes opened and stared at John. His mouth moved and a dry whisper came out. "Help! Us!" John screamed and slammed the drawer shut. He stumbled back into a metal table, which shakes as the white cloth slid off the body on it. To his horror, that body was sitting up now. The corpse was an old woman. She sat upright, her eyes glowing with a strange light. She slowly turned her head toward John and said, "Why you dey run, John?" Her voice was rough and angry. John could not believe his ears or his eyes. How did she know his name? John looked around and saw more bodies stirring on their tables. A young man's corpse rolled its head toward him, and another body slowly raised an arm. John's heart pounded like a drum. This couldn't be real. Maybe it was a nightmare. "Stay back, please," he cried. He stepped away, but bodies were all around him. Some were sitting up, their dead eyes staring at him. The old woman slid off the table, her bare feet hitting the floor. She pointed a finger at John. "You leave us for this cold place. We no go gree," she shouted, her voice full of anger and hurt. Dark, dry tears ran down her cheeks. John trembled from head to toe. "I didn't leave you here. I'm just a worker," he whimpered. He did feel sorry for her, but he was also terrified. She stepped closer to him. "We can't rest," cried the young man with the cut on his head. His voice was full of pain and anger. "We dey suffer here. Help us or you go suffer too." John realized they were angry and in pain, and they wanted his help. But he didn't know what to do. His legs felt like jelly. Suddenly, a tall ghost let out a sharp scream that made John cover his ears. The lights flickered and then burst, leaving the room mostly dark except for the red glow of the exit sign. Shadows danced on the walls. John knew he had to get out. He dashed towards the exit, his footsteps echoing. Behind him, angry voices shouted, "John, come back here now, and if you run, we go find you." Their voices chased him even though their bodies did not. John pushed the door open and ran out into the dark, windy night. He thought he could still hear faint shouts behind him, but he did not stop. He sprinted across the yard toward the front gate. At the gate sat Peter, the security guard, dozing on a wooden chair. He wore a blue uniform and had a flashlight on his lap. John ran up, gasping for breath. "Peter! Peter!" he shouted. Peter jolted awake, nearly falling from his chair, and grabbed his flashlight in confusion. "Who goes there?" Peter mumbled, startled. When he recognized John, he frowned. John's face was pale and he was shaking. "John, wetin happen? Why you dey run like this?" Peter asked, slipping into pidgin. John gripped Peter's arm, panting. "The body's in the morgue." "They got up. They spoke to me," he cried. Peter shook his head. "John, ghost no dey wake like that," he said, thinking John must be imagining things. "I'm telling the truth." "They even knew my name," John cried, his eyes wide with terror. Peter put a hand on John's shoulder. "Calm down. No bodies are walking. You just need rest," he said gently, trying to make John sit down. But John joggled away. "No, I'm not going back there," he cried. Peter was annoyed now. He thought John was just being foolish. Peter frowned and started walking toward the morgue. "John, stop this play. I no go leave my post for your story. If something is wrong, let's go see," he said. John panicked. "Peter, wait!" he cried, running after him. But Peter kept going, wanting to prove nothing was wrong. John grabbed Peter's arm. "Don't go inside," he pleaded. Peter shook him off. "Leave me, John." "I must do my job," the guard said firmly. John was desperate. He imagined the dead grabbing them both if Peter opened the door. As Peter reached for the morgue door, John's fear exploded. In a burst of panic, John slapped Peter across the face. The sharp sound echoed in the quiet night. Peter stumbled back, clutching his cheek in shock. For a moment, both men froze. Peter's eyes were wide in disbelief. John was shocked at himself too, shaking and breathing hard. "I'm sorry, but please don't open that door," John whispered. Peter's shock turned to anger. "John, you craze! You slapped me!" he shouted, stepping toward John. But then a low wailing sound rose from inside the morgue, like many voices crying. Peter froze, his anger melting into fear. That sound was not the wind or an animal. It was like a crowd of people crying. The hair on his arms stood up. "Jesu," Peter whispered, making the sign of the cross. John knew what it was. The dead were crying out, calling for him. "We have to go, Peter." "Now," John said. He grabbed Peter's hand, and this time Peter did not fight. Both of them turned and ran out of the gate and down the dark street. They did not stop until they were far away under the dim light of a closed shop. Both men were gasping for breath. Peter was trembling. He never thought he would encounter ghosts for real. Peter looked at John with wide eyes. "John, you were telling the truth?" he asked softly. John just nodded, tears on his cheeks. Peter quickly made the sign of the cross again. "God help us," he whispered. "I'm going home," John said in a shaky voice. He couldn't even think of going back for his things at the morgue. "I need to get far from here." Peter nodded. He also didn't want to stay near that place now. "Okay, go home. I go stay with others till morning," he said, deciding he would wait with the other guards where it was safe and bright. John and Peter parted ways. John almost ran down the empty road toward his house. It was very late, and the street was dark and lonely. Every shadow or rustling tree made him jump. Distant dogs were barking, and each bark made him shiver. After what felt like forever, John reached his small house. With shaking hands, he fumbled with his keys, then rushed inside. He locked the door tight and even pushed a chair against it. Then he turned on every light. The bright lights made him feel a little safer. John sat on his bed, holding his head in his hands. He could not believe what had happened. Dead people had come to life and spoken to him. They had even called his name. He could still hear the old woman's angry words and the young man's threat echoing in his mind. "You leave us for this cold place. Help us or you go suffer too." "What do I do now?" John whispered. The room was quiet. Of course, no one answered. Who could he tell? Who would ever believe him, especially at this hour? Maybe by morning it would all seem like a bad dream, he hoped. He was exhausted from shock and running. He decided to try to rest. John left the lights on and lay down without even changing out of his clothes. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those pale faces and heard those voices, so he kept his eyes open, staring at the ceiling. But after a long time, his tired body gave in. Eventually, John fell asleep with the lights still on. But John's sleep was not peaceful at all. He drifted into a troubled dream. In the dream, he found himself standing back inside the morgue. The room was dark and silent. John looked around in panic. He did not want to be here. No, this is just a dream, he told himself. He tried to wake up, but he couldn't. The air felt heavy and the door behind him was gone. He was trapped. Suddenly he heard soft footsteps behind him. John turned around slowly. There was the old woman ghost, the one from before, but now she looked even scarier. Her eyes glowed bright red in the dark. Her face was twisted with anger and sorrow. She was floating above the floor. "John," she called. Her voice echoed as if many voices spoke together. John felt a chill down his spine. "You think you fit run from us?" the ghost said in her rough voice. "You think you can run from us?" John stepped back, shaking his head. I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I was scared." The old woman's face grew even more angry. "We don't wait for too long. Too long," she thundered. Her voice became a roar that shook the air. John covered his ears. From the shadows behind her, other figures appeared. The young man with the cut on his head, the tall man who had screamed, and more. Their eyes all glowed in the dark like small flames. They surrounded John, floating closer and closer. "Help us, John," the young man's ghost said, stretching out a hand. His voice was bitter and filled with hurt. "We cannot rest." John turned and saw a woman with half her face burnt. She pointed a finger at him and hissed, "If you no help us, you go join us." John couldn't take it anymore. He squeezed his eyes shut and screamed, "I will go back." The ghosts stopped moving for a moment. The old woman floated right in front of John. Her eyes were all white now, no pupils, staring into his. "Promise us," she rasped. "I promise," John cried. "I promise, just please leave me alone." All the ghosts suddenly opened their mouths and let out a terrible howl. The sound was so loud and full of pain that John fell to his knees, covering his ears. John jerked awake from his sleep with a scream. He had fallen off his bed and was on the floor of his room. His heart was pounding as if it would burst from his chest. Early morning light loomed through his window. He was soaked in sweat and shaking from head to toe. He looked around the room, breathing hard. The lights were still on. There were no ghosts here now. It was just a nightmare. But it felt so real. John wiped his damp face. His whole body was trembling, and he realized he was crying a little. John knew the ghosts wanted him back at the morgue. He had promised to help them. As scared as he was, he knew he had to go back or he might never have any peace. And deep down, he felt pity for those spirits. They were suffering and just wanted to rest. John changed into a clean shirt, though his hands were still shaking. He whispered a quick prayer, asking God to protect him and give him courage. "Please, I'm so scared, but I have to do this," he said. In the morning sunlight, John left his house and headed back to the morgue. Each step felt heavy. He wanted to turn and run away, but he kept going. The city was waking up in the bright daylight, but John's heart still pounded with fear. Finally, John stood at the morgue gate again. The building looked quiet and ordinary in the daylight, as if nothing strange had ever happened. Peter was nearby, eyes red and tired. He could not believe John had come back. Peter stared at him and whispered, "John, you sure say you want go back? John, are you sure you want to go back?" John took a deep breath and nodded. He had to do this. He walked past the gate toward the morgue door. It was unlocked and slightly open. Peter stayed a few steps behind, too afraid to go in with him. John gently pushed the door and stepped inside once more. The room was dim and cool. Everything looked normal at first. Bodies lay still under their white sheets, just as before. The white cloth that had fallen off the old woman's body was still on the floor where it had dropped last night. John swallowed hard. He took a few steps forward. "I'm here. I came back," he said softly. His voice echoed in the still room. At first, nothing happened. Then a gentle rustling sound came from the nearest table. The old woman slowly sat up again and lifted the white cloth from her face. One by one, other bodies on the other tables began to stir as well, but none of them got off the tables this time. The old woman's eyes opened and looked at John. John felt a lump in his throat, but he mustered courage and spoke. "What do you want me to do?" "How can I help you?" he asked in a steady voice. The old woman ghost stared at him. Her voice came out soft now, almost a whisper. "Help us find rest," she said. "Tell our families what happened. We no won't be forgotten." "We don't want to be forgotten." John's eyes filled with tears. "I will help you. I promise you won't be forgotten," he said gently. The old woman's stern face softened into a small, sad smile. She nodded slowly, then lay back down on her table. One by one, the other bodies became still and quiet again, as if they were finally at peace. The heavy, angry feeling in the room lifted. The air felt lighter. John let out a long breath he didn't realize he was holding. He quietly turned and walked out of the morgue, closing the door behind him. Outside, Peter was waiting anxiously. "Is it over?" Peter asked in a shaky voice. John gave a tired nod. "Yes," he said. "They can rest now." Peter simply placed a hand on John's shoulder. He didn't say another word. Both of them stood there in the warm morning sun, feeling a great sense of relief. John had faced the dead and their spirits. It was the scariest thing that ever happened to him, but he found the courage to return and help them. As the day grew brighter over Calabar, John felt that the nightmare was finally over. The spirits could now sleep in peace, as he had made promise to relate to their people when next they visit. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, and comment for more unique stories.